So good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where this finds you. I'm Clarisse Berthera, researcher at the WMD program of UNIDIR, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to this event. Just to note that this event is being recorded and should be made available online in due course. This is the second event in a series on technical briefs on emerging technologies and the BWC, co-organized by the BWC-ISU and UNIDIR. This series of events aims to foster a science diplomacy by bringing together technical experts, diplomats, and practitioners to provide a clear policy-relevant insight to support ongoing working group discussions. We aim to translate complex technical trends into relevant options to inform efforts to strengthen the BWC. This second event is also organized within the context of UNIDIR Science and Technology Watchtower project that had the core objective of contributing to a more systematic identification and analysis of scientific and technological developments and their impacts within specific disarmament context, namely conventional weapons, WMDs, and ICTs. The technology briefings in particular aims to offer the diplomatic community the opportunity to learn and discuss in an informal setting and through a direct engagement with experts, specific enabling technologies relevant to their disarmament domain. Today's event will focus on cyberbiosecurity. It will feature a presentation on recent UNIDIR paper on this topic, and then we'll have a conversation-style panel with experts to explore the implication of cyberbiosecurity for bioscience governance, verification, and national implementation of the BWC, followed by a Q&A session with the audience. We aim to keep the discussion focused, accessible, and relevant to the BWC. Throughout the event, we welcome input from all of you using the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. And your questions and comments will be treated as anonymous, and I will pose them to the speaker to enrich the discussion. So to start, I will invite each of our speakers to introduce themselves briefly. So we'll start with Louison Mazot.
Thank you, Clarisse, and hi, everyone. So my name is Louison. I used to be an associate researcher for UNIDIR's WMD program, working on the BWC and supporting the Watchtower project as well. I recently moved to a new position at the Office for Disarmament Affairs WMD branch in the UN Secretariat, and I hold a bachelor from King's College London and an MA from the Graduate Institute in Geneva. Very happy to be here, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Zia Ashraf.
Thank you so much, Clarisse. It is an honor to participate in this discussion at such a pivotal moment for BWC. My name is Dr. Zia Ashraf. I am currently serving as assistant professor at Government College University, Faisalabad, Pakistan. I'm a researcher working at the intersection of antimicrobial resistance, biorisk management, and cyber biosecurity. I have also the honor of serving as recertification board member for International Federation for Biosafety Associations, IFBA, and United Nations Office for Disarmament Youth for Biosecurity Fellow of 2025 cohort. I have two main domains our professional interest. One is research and second is the training and policy towards pandemic preparedness and cyber biosecurity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zia. Ryan Theo.
Yep, thanks, Clarisse, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this panel. My name is Ryan Teo. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Birmingham. My PhD is in computational biology, and I'm looking at developing algorithms that can help us better make use of metagenomic sequencing data to do pathogen agnostic surveillance and detection, especially in clinical samples. So my work interfaces with ecological studies and public health as well. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic. And previously, I was also a political affairs intern at the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs, supporting the Biological Weapons Convention during the 9th Review Conference. So I'm really happy to be back in this setting to talk about these issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. And Julius Trajano.
Yes, thank you. And I'm very happy to contribute to this exciting discussion on cyber biosecurity. I'm a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University here in Singapore. I'm part of a research team focusing on biosecurity and international security. So my areas of research focus on nuclear security, biosecurity in the context of the Asia Pacific region and ASEAN. So I'm one of the co-organizers of this Track 2 workshop on biosecurity and health security in the Asia Pacific under the Council for Security Cooperation in the Asia Pacific. And I have also written several policy articles covering biosecurity and its implication on ASEAN in several journal articles and policy-oriented reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. So to get us started and help understand the topic of cyber biosecurity, Louison will present the main finding of the UNIDIR new paper, Cyber Biosecurity, a matter of international peace and security. This paper was co-authored by Louison when she was working at UNIDIR and Andras Kastelik. Louison, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Clarisse, for that. First, I think to present the report, I should probably provide some background. So as you said, this is a joint publication between the WMD and SecTech programs at UNIDIR with support from the European Union. So with former colleagues at SecTech, we started from the observation that while we are witnessing an increased digitalization of the biological domain, very limited tools were available to policymakers to understand these developments and the actions that may be required from the international disarmament community. And at the same time, so also based from the data collected by the WMD program and VERTIC through the BWC National Implementation Measures database, some states were starting to implement what we may refer to as cyber biosecurity measures. So I'm a little bit biased because when I joined UNIDIR, that was the first project I was deployed to. And further to this, reflecting on new domains to support disarmament and non-proliferation efforts is also something that is really encouraged by recent developments at the UN, such as the Pact for the Future and the recent SG report on scientific and technological developments impacting international security and disarmament. So this report on cyber biosecurity was really imagined as a very preliminary step. It is really short, if you have a look at it, to really introduce the topic, and it is by no means all-encompassing. This topic requires further research, and we just hope that this first publication will trigger further discussion. So now moving to the next slide. Thank you, Nick. So we'll just wait. Yeah. So on methodology, so for our preliminary research on the topic, we conducted a literature review. You have a lot of academic articles that are being published. And we also used, as I mentioned, tools developed by UNIDIR, such as the BWC National Implementation Measures database. And this tool notably enabled us to explore cyber biosecurity measures implemented by states parties to the BWC. So now moving to the next slide. Thank you. So on the structure, so the report contains 5 sections or main sections. It starts by exploring the digitalization of the biological domain by outlining some benefits and applications in health, in agriculture, in biological research and developments more widely. In this section, we notably explore automation technologies such as cloud labs, but we also look at synthetic biology, and we really try to address both aspects of both the benefits, but also dual use risks. And what is interesting here is that the following section of the report try to really narrow down our approach by looking at the most serious risks that are associated with those technologies. So related to connectivity, data manipulation, supply chain exposure, and as I mentioned, dual use concerns. We also introduced a definition of cyberbiosecurity. So we can discuss that later, but there is not a fixed notion yet, and you can find multiple definitions of the notion. But the definition we use in the report is the following. So cyberbiosecurity refers to a collection of practices aimed at addressing the potential ICT threats to those systems at the intersection of the digital and biological domains. More specifically, it includes methods, procedures, and measures to tackle ICT threats to biosafety and biosecurity. And then we have the next section that explores the most serious risk associated with the notions, as I mentioned. And in the last two, we try to focus on efforts that are undertaken at the multilateral level, so within the United Nations, but also in other fora. And there is a section on national implementation. So what are the measures that are already being implemented by some states parties to the BWC? And then we conclude with some very preliminary recommendations. So now let's move on very quickly to the findings. You will also have the definition here on that slide. So the report finds that the rapid convergence of biotechnology and digital technologies is creating, as I said, significant vulnerabilities at the intersection of both domains. So automated laboratories, cloud-based experiments, and AI-driven bioinformatics have improved efficiency, but also exposed critical systems to cyber attacks that could disrupt vaccine production, manipulate genetic data, or enable covert weaponization. And despite these risks, cyber biosecurity remains poorly defined and under-discussed, I think we can say, in international governance frameworks. With limited attention in relevant fora such as the Biological Weapons Convention. The report stresses that these threats have implications for international peace and security. And the report's finding on national implementation measures revealed that very few states have actually explicitly integrated cyber biosecurity measures into their existing biosecurity or cyber security framework. We also find that while there is some legislation, these laws rarely account for digital vulnerabilities in biological systems specifically. And most national measures focused on physical containment, pathogen control, and compliance with the BWC broadly, but it lacks that specific aspect. So this gap underscores the need for states to develop comprehensive strategies that link cyber and biological risk management, establish technical standards, and promote cross-sector collaboration between ICT and life science communities. So to address these gaps, the report recommends establishing or discussing a definition of cyber biosecurity, considering the topic into multilateral forums, capacity building, and really fostering cooperation between these two communities, because it is often just challenging to speak about similar things because we just use different words. And here I'm speaking really by experience, because when we drafted that report, we were from two very different programs at UNIDIR, and sometimes we were referring to really similar notion, but meaning things that were completely different. So language is really important here. And now moving on to what we are missing, or, I think that's the slide from before. Yeah, what we are missing and what else could we explore? So as I said, the report is really short. So there are certainly a lot of things that we could add. So bearing in mind that we are not technical experts, the report does not provide operational guidance, such as I said, technical standards, protocols, or model legislation for implementation. Also, the role of the private sector is not addressed, so like biotech firms, cloud lab providers, and AI developers. There is also no discussion about potential frameworks, and also I think the economic and development dimensions. We touched a little bit about UN processes and how we could bring that topic to the discussion, but it remains very at a superficial level, so that could also be discussed further in other publications. So what are the next steps, really? I guess this will be also central to our discussion today. But I think supporting states in the implementation of cyber biosecurity measures and sharing best practices is really important. We also recommend the use of UNIDIR tools such as the Cyber Policy Portal and the BWC National Implementation Measures Database, because even if I said that these measures were still very limited, you still have some elements there that could help any state that would potentially consider that topic in the measures. And also, so really fostering that engagement with the private sector and trying to make those communities interact more often within relevant fora. So I think this concludes my presentation. Again, happy to discuss further, and do not hesitate to reach out if you have any question on the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louison, for this very interesting presentation. If you cover a lot, I would like to ask you some questions related to this. So you mentioned that cyber biosecurity is still an emerging term with several definitions circulating. So how should we understand cyber biosecurity today, and why has it become such a critical field for the international community?
Thank you, Clarisse. So yes, as I mentioned during the presentation, this is becoming an important notion because it involves also the emergence of new vulnerabilities that were not foreseen when we drafted disarmament instruments in relation to biosecurity. The notion is emerging. So as I said during the presentation, there are also various definitions that are put forward. So there is one in the report that you've seen on the slides, but there are also other definitions that include the one developed by Merck and others, like understanding the vulnerabilities to unwanted surveillance, intrusions, and malicious or harmful activities impacting cyber physical systems. So we could refer to other definitions, but really common elements include these interactions between the cyber and digital space, and infrastructures and platforms that are being targeted at this nexus, and for which specific measures need to be implemented to protect the bioeconomy, which is also increasing at the moment. So I think this notion really links to the fact that we have this side of the economy that is growing. We know that all the measures in place will not protect all the systems that are actually being used on a daily basis, and we need to find ways to make them more resilient in facing those threats.
Okay, thank you. During your presentation, you also noted that cyber biosecurity is not simply cyber security applied to laboratories. So what makes cyber biosecurity distinct from traditional cyber security?
Thank you, Clarisse. Actually, this is a question that I had struggled with during our report drafting phase, because we may think that, it's just like applying cybersecurity to health and agriculture. And of course, there are some measures from cyber security that help tremendously. But I think here it's really important to understand that there is this biodigital interface that we do not have in traditional cybersecurity measures. So while cybersecurity focuses on protecting data, networks, and IT systems from unauthorized access or disruption, cyber biosecurity really goes further by considering the biological consequences of cyber attacks. So it includes manipulating genetic sequences, disrupting automated biomanufacturing, also compromising genomic databases. So it combines principles principles of cybersecurity with what we use in the report, so also biosafety and biosecurity measures to safeguard both digital and biological assets. So I think really having this notion of nexus in mind between the two domains is really important, and that's slightly different from the original notion.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. Why does cyber biosecurity remain misunderstood or prioritized by policymakers and diplomats?
Thank you. So, I mean, as we're doing today, I think that this is a sign that this is slightly changing. There are more UN initiatives, as I said in the introduction, that point towards studying those threats at the nexus between different domains, including cyber and bio. However, in the end, it remains a technical notion. And when you put not one, but two technical notions together, I think it really also suffers from this sort of repulsive effect where people also prefer to look at something that is a little bit more attractive. So I think it's also a matter of how we talk about it, how we socialize our findings as researchers, and how we manage to also create effective interactions between communities that also work on very different aspects. So, as you said in the introduction, so making policymakers and technical experts, scientists really come together so that they can find solutions that are sustainable and also, as I said, notions that are attractive to all, because in the end, we need to find solutions as this is becoming critical.
Thank you very much, Louison. So let's broaden the discussion now and unpack a bit more on what cyber biosecurity means in practice and why this concept is rapidly gaining attention within international security circles. And so a natural next step is to look at what recent developments in biotechnology or AI have most expanded the cyber biosecurity risk surface. So perhaps Zia?
Thank you so much, Clarice, for this opportunity and this important question. In my view, recent advances in biotechnology, along with artificial intelligence, have greatly expanded the cyber biosecurity risks, particularly where digital and biological systems can now operate as a single integrated environment, as mentioned in the previous book published, Cyber Physical Environment. So, first of all, the most immediate expansion comes from generative AI models and large language models known as LLMs, which have enhanced definitely legitimate research, biosurveillance, and emergency response procedures. But obviously, we know that LLMs can be used to bypass safety protocols also. For example, AI tools like AlphaFold and protein design models, while these are definitely revolutionary for medicine, they can be theoretically of dual use. How? Because bad actors can design novel toxins or pathogens that do not even exist in nature. So, effectively bypassing our current screening list also. So, this is a huge a perceived risk, we can say. And secondly, the world is moving towards cloud labs where experiments are executed remotely by codes and commands. So definitely, these facilities bring enormous benefits to the humanity, but also they create some vulnerabilities, which means if we can hack that code, we can hack the biology also. So, as an example, if we most of the participants or some of the participants might have the chance to read some news and interview that in 2007 the wireless capability of the former US Vice President Dick Cheney's implanted defibrillator was disabled. Intentionally, it was intentionally disabled because his security and medical team recognized that a terrorist might hack that device remotely and can deliver the lethal shock to him. So it was like the start of cyber biophysical interface comprehension. As another example, in 2017, researchers at the University of Washington demonstrated that encoded malware into a physical strand of DNA. Physical strand of DNA and malware digital. So they encoded it into the physical strand of the DNA and it corrupted the entire sequencing machine software. So this is another example. Plus, our infrastructure, especially in the global south, is very fragile. As we saw, another example is 27 NotPTR ransomware attack on pharma giant Merck, which costed over $1 billion loss and disrupted the production of Gardasil vaccine. So, in my view, similar attacks can silently corrupt the integrity of a vaccine lot. They can control any device remotely, turning a life saving product into a public health threat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zia, and particularly for this example, which I'm sure will help the audience understand more this topic. Related to this, Ryan, in your work, how have cyber biosecurity vulnerabilities surfaced in the practice, and what do they really reveal about real-world cyber biorisk?
Yeah, I think the wanted to thank Louison for the report because I think it's very timely. I mentioned before that my work focuses on genome sequencing, and Zia also brought up the few examples of the genome sequencing being compromised. A couple of weeks ago, researchers have also found security vulnerabilities in portable genome sequencers, and these are often used in the field because they have a small footprint, and it was used in outbreak analysis and stuff like that. They found security vulnerabilities in these sequencers that made them vulnerable to denial of service attacks or data manipulation, and all of this because they're open to attackers being able to spoof IP addresses and avoid these sort of basic security configurations that these sequencers have. So I think that is something that intersects between my work in genome sequencing, but also my thinking about security. And it's something that I think a lot of researchers take for granted, that their devices, their equipment are mostly secure and there's no reason to really secure them from attackers. I think this, and since the vulnerabilities have been published on the provider of, or the company that made those portable sequencing devices have patched those security vulnerabilities. So I'm not exactly raising the panic on them here, but I just wanted to show that something as fundamental as reading DNA and taking for granted that what DNA we're reading is correct can be compromised by these security vulnerabilities. So I think given how fundamental genome sequencing as a technology is in research and innovation and manufacturing and quality assurance and stuff like that, I think it really drove home the point that we can't really take these security challenges for granted. And yeah, I think that was an example that really hit home to me recently.
Thank you very much, Ryan. So I guess these challenges look different across regions. And so my next question is more on a regional perspective. And my question is addressed to you, Julius, what it means for Southeast Asia. Why is cyber biosecurity needed there?
Thank you, Clarice, and for the presentation on cyber biosecurity. So basically, Southeast Asia has seen a rapid growth in its bioscience and biotechnology industry. And as biotechnology industry in Southeast Asia becomes increasingly digitized with massive amounts of genetic data, research outcomes, and even synthetic biology information and data being stored and processed in digital formats, the need to secure these assets against cyber attacks is critical. And moreover, life science and bioscience facilities in this region have been steadily adopting advanced information technologies and operational technologies to enhance their critical scientific functions that support prevention, detection, response, and recovery to catastrophic biosecurity events. And as a key lesson from the recent pandemic, several national high containment laboratories have been set up in most of the countries in Southeast Asia. BSL-3 labs, one country is planning to set up its BSL-4 lab. So they have been working with biological agents and living microorganisms basically to prepare the country for the next disease X or pandemic. And these laboratories have been increasingly relying on cloud-based systems and other IT systems, basically, to handle their data and to help secure their laboratories. So cyber systems helping these laboratories to be secure. However, cyber attacks on these laboratories can effectively compromise the security of for example, the biological agents that they store. And compounding this challenge is the advancement of AI, which Zia has mentioned, and its widespread use in cloud computing. So I did a little bit of research in Southeast Asia, and the adoption of cloud technology, the proliferation of cloud labs is seen as critical for enabling startups, biotech startups, and researchers to accelerate their R&D and bring innovations to the market faster and more cost-friendly. But it also means that they are now also vulnerable to cyber attacks. So in terms of policy, the importance of enhancing cybersecurity frameworks in the region, in Southeast Asia, for instance, is paramount, given the increasing use of these IT systems in biotechnology. So there are many countries in the region have adopted their respective national cybersecurity plans and strategies, whether through a comprehensive law or various government regulations. But I echo the several findings from the policy report that was just presented. A significant challenge that I've seen in this region is the lack of a cohesive policy framework that directly addresses cyber biosecurity. So existing regulations right now are often fragmented, as cybersecurity and biosecurity are typically treated in isolation, leading to gaps in this comprehensive protection for cyber biosecurity. So relatedly, the region's biosecurity experts, we have very good local champions for biosecurity. They have pointed out that cyber biosecurity issues remain poorly addressed, which I think also reflect the findings in the report, and underappreciated in the life science and biotechnology communities in Southeast Asia. There's also a lack of awareness and understanding of the potential cybersecurity risks and threats associated with digital lab and digital information about biological samples inside the laboratories in Southeast Asia. Yeah, so basically there are various layers of opportunities for the development of cyber biosecurity in Southeast Asia, but the problem is the underappreciation of both the cybersecurity and the biosecurity communities of the need to address cyber biosecurity. So you have a very robust cybersecurity regional and national frameworks in all Southeast Asia. You have a biosecurity frameworks that are starting to become more comprehensive, but at the same time they are being developed in silos. Yeah, so there's a need to have these two communities, cyber and biosecurity, to come together. And then I also want to reflect on Luison's assertion earlier about the different understandings of cyber biosecurity, because in Southeast Asia, even if you divide cyber and biosecurity itself is viewed differently by different sectors. Whether if you're talking to a veterinarian, if you're talking to an agriculture biosecurity, or if you're talking to a public health expert, they have different understanding of biosecurity and how it should be upheld. And then when you combine it to cybersecurity, then it becomes more, I guess, complex. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Julius, and indeed it makes sense. So thanks to all of you. Now we understand a little bit more this topic. And so now we can focus on cyber biosecurity implication on BWC. So a central question is how does cyber biosecurity intersect with the BWC core's goal of preventing biological weapons development? Louison, perhaps?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. So that's a good question. So in the report, as I've shown previously, there is a section that is focusing on threat to international peace and security. Initially, that was a longer section where we looked at different scenarios. So we outlined different threats, and notably the possible misuse of biological information gathered through cyber attacks, or even the direct alteration of vaccine production systems to render outputs harmful. So of course, preventing this type of malicious activities will certainly be in line with the objective of the convention, as it would really reduce the possibility for ill-intentioned actors to develop biological weapons via the exploitation of cyber means. So, and then this is something that should be taken into account in this fora, I believe.
Thank you very much. Given the transboundary nature of cyber biorisk, I guess regional mechanisms can play an important role in capacity building and norm development. So this leads us to what role can regional bodies such as ASEAN, for example, play in supporting cyber biosecurity principle aligned with the BWC? Julius?
Thank you. So I would like to highlight the existing ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian initiatives and networks. So there are existing regional mechanisms and networks within the region that provide valuable platforms to complement and reinforce the BWC in Southeast Asia, and specifically on promoting cyber biosecurity. So by leveraging established regional platforms such as, I give one example, is the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting, ASEAN ADMM, Chemical, Biological, and Radiological Defense Expert Network. So it's one of the networks in Southeast Asia that offers capacity building in with regard to biological weapon convention implementation, and that should include mainstreaming cyber biosecurity. And I would also like to point out that the ASEAN should serve as in this region of Southeast Asia should serve as a valuable platform to connect, to bridge the two communities of cybersecurity experts and biosecurity experts. In Southeast Asia, we have these various centers of excellence for cybersecurity. So there's an ASEAN Japan Cybersecurity Capacity Building Center and the ASEAN Singapore Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. So both centers and the center that was established for biosecurity and BWC implementation in Southeast Asia should be able to some kind of collaboration on joint capacity building exercises to mainstream cyber biosecurity and increase the awareness among relevant sectors in the region on the importance of cyber biosecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps a more technical question, more in practice. One element often discussed in BWC circles is digital sequence information. As biological design becomes increasingly digital, sequence information itself can become a precursor or enabler, sorry. So we can turn to the question of, from a BWC perspective, how should we understand the security implication of digital sequencing information as a precursor to potential BW developments? Ryan? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to take a shot at this question. I think it's something that I deal with on a regular basis as part of my PhD. By that, I mean digital sequencing information, and also building on Louison's point earlier about how ICT resources can be misused and are open to avenues of misuse by malicious actors. The general purpose criterion of the BWC applies to biological agents as well as their precursors. And I think in the age of biodesign, synthetic biology, where we're increasingly able to translate genome sequences into viable living, well, you can argue if they're living, but biological samples, I think it's ever more important to elevate our understanding of digital assets as precursors to BW development. Yeah, so I think in its current state, digital sequences are neither sufficient nor essential in any biological weapons development program, but I think that will change in the future. I'd argue that for the BWC to consider digital sequencing information as precursors to BW development doesn't actually meet that high of a standard. So just because digital sequencing information is not necessary nor sufficient doesn't mean we should ignore it. I think it's becoming an increasingly important component that we should consider in any potential BW development program. So I think it's important to remember that when the BWC was entered into force in the 1970s, biology looked very different. There weren't like computing resources, and high performance computing was not as ubiquitous as it is right now. So a lot of its focus naturally was on physical equipment, reagents, and the transfer of these equipments. I think in the digital age, we need to start thinking about the digital analogs of those reagents and equipment and stuff like that. So I think recognizing digital sequencing information as a precursor to BW development is quite important. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you for reminding us this important element. After hearing all of this, I think we can say that there is a critical balance that needs to be maintained, strengthening the security while ensuring that scientific progress is not inadvertently impaired. So how can the BWC threaten global biosecurity capacities without unintentionally hindering scientific research or biotechnology innovation? Zia?
Thanks so much, Claire. I was asking for the opportunity also to answer this question because I think this is very, very critical question because effective cyber biosecurity should not be a barrier towards scientific progress, but actually it should be a foundation for safe, trusted, and equitable cooperation because we want the science to progress. We do not want policing actually. So, in my view, the convention can promote voluntary security by design practices, for example, for digital laboratory systems, sequencing platforms like Ryan mentioned, and all those automated facilities and cloud labs. So, rather than restricting the access, such measures can strengthen the resilience of the global infrastructure, including the Article 10, which stands on the global cooperation also of the biological weapons convention. So, secondly, capacity building should also be centered towards people and institutions, but not only technology. Because through, as we have seen in those recommendations by the working group, international cooperation and assistance (ICA) mechanism, states parties could access training in cyber biosecurity fundamentals, cyber biosecurity best practices, authentication systems, and all those cyber incident response planning. So finally, enhanced cyber biosecurity measures should definitely not inadvertently disadvantage the low resource environments or the countries in global south. For example, if we ask state parties to screen the DNA synthesis orders, we must also assist them in acquiring all the softwares and tools required for that databases also. So by doing this, the convention can enhance cyber biosecurity while fully supporting its peaceful and scientific cooperation and without hindering the science. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this brings us to the question of accessibility and equity. One important aspect is ensuring that cyber biosecurity safeguards do not widen existing capacity gaps. And when thinking about the measures that we can put in place, a couple of questions in the Q&A mentioned that purely technical control measures may be insufficient, and we need to consider social and organizational aspects, such as the culture or incentive and other mentions. The importance of trainings, not only for youth, but also for senior leaders, in order to raise awareness. So there is a lot to discuss on this aspect. The first questions related to this is how can we implement new safeguards while preserving access to essential tools for researchers in low resource settings? Sia?
Thank you so much, Clarice, for this opportunity again, because it's definitely complement to my previous point of view about the low resource settings, and we obviously we do not want to hinder the science, but we want to make it secure. So, in my view, as safeguards are being continuously evolved, inclusivity and equitable access must remain core principle for whole the nations, for whole the world, and definitely it might be the motto of UN and Biological Weapons Convention. So, cyber biosecurity should broaden the participation in science, but it should not narrow it. We obviously do not want to log all those researchers, all those scientists. We need to solve the next pandemic. So, first of all, the Biological Weapons Convention can promote responsible access models, which can balance the openness with security. So, for example, if we replace the location based authentication with identity based authentication, it will allow the researchers, regardless of their geography, to use shared databases or all those analytical platforms and all tools while protecting the sensitive data and preventing misuse. Through Article 10 implementation, definitely the ICA mechanism, as I had mentioned in my previous point, it can support voluntary packages that combine secure cloud services, cyber hygiene tools, and training on safe and responsible cyber behaviors, like the one of the questions you have also mentioned from the participants. So it will ensure that cyber biosecurity does not become a de facto barrier for a researcher in a global south, but it is a supportive tool or mechanism for all those working together. Because if no one is safe at any part of the world, then whole the world is not considered to be safe, because bacteria do not respect boundaries or borders. So they can travel from one part of the world towards to the other part of the world within 24-28 hours. So also past global cyber incidents, if we look into those incidents, they illustrate that impact was most severe where digital resilience was weakest. So, in my view, by strengthening cyber biosecurity capacity worldwide, including global north, global south, and all those countries involved, it will protect all the states parties, and it will support the early detection and definitely early reporting and definitely the early response to all those emerging biological threats coming because of the convergence of biology and cyber aspects. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this very comprehensive response. A question more on equity, perhaps for Ryan. What equity challenges results from the growing importance of sequence databases, and how might disparities in access or governance affect global biosecurity?
Yeah, a lot of my response will overlap a lot with Zia's point about not wanting to restrict access of these digital assets and resources to legitimate users and people who have legitimate uses for these. So a lot of my work involves looking at data from genetic sequence databases, including the Sequencing Read Archive and the European Nucleotide Archive. And just an introduction, these are basically genetic sequence databases where researchers upload genetic sequences from studies that they've done. And I think it in itself, as an act of open data sharing, is a very big part of scientific cooperation across borders. I can just today, I can download a bunch of sequences from a study that was done, for example, halfway across the world, because researchers decided to make their data available, not just for their study, but for other researchers in other parts of the world to answer different questions using the same data set. I think that is a model of scientific cooperation and open data sharing that we should continue to preserve, not only because in itself is very cool to have data available and furthering scientific advancements without having to duplicate experiments. But these are also very critical capabilities to have in an outbreak scenario or in a public health or an epidemic scenario. Important data sharing and accessible data is extremely important when, for example, in the sharing of the SARS-CoV-2 genome that led to the quick development of diagnostics and then further on vaccines. So it's definitely a model that we want to preserve. I think the issue here is there might be equity challenges that arise when we start to think about the limits to that open data sharing. We want to share as much data as possible, but we want to make sure that there are sequences that have a higher, that have more dire consequences if they end up being misused. And therefore, not all sequences are equal. Some have higher risk of misuse, and therefore we might want to limit that, whether it's through managed access databases or just keeping the data separate from open databases altogether. There's no real answer to that at this point because there's no agreement on what risks people are accepting of when it comes to sharing sequences of potential misuse. But I just wanted to point that out, that when we start to think about how there are some sequences that should not be shared, then the question arises, who is it okay to share it with and who deserves access to that, those sequences of concern, for example. And I think those would inevitably run counter to open data sharing and lead to some equity challenges. And I don't have any solutions for that, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. And now with all these elements, let's try to look ahead and consider the BWC and how it can remain responsive to these fast-moving developments. So I'm thinking about one valuable tool here, which is horizon scanning. So it's useful to ask, so how should international frameworks like the BWC evolve to address threats arising from the integration of new technologies with biological design, automation, and analysis? Zia?
Thanks so much, Clarice, for this question again. So, Biological Weapons Convention definitely remains a strong and adaptable instrument. It is old, but it does not require to definitely change its purpose, but it can modernize its toolkit, including all those cyber biosecurity aspects. So, in my opinion, as per the working group proposals also, proposal for standing science and technology advisory mechanism, as mentioned in that proposal by the open-ended working group, it provides a practical pathway also. So regular multidisciplinary assessments drawing on biology, AI, cyber biosecurity, and engineering would enable timely identification of the risks at any part of the world and opportunities also arising from the cyber biosecurity, cyber bioconvergence. So these assessments can inform national implementation without creating new legal obligations for the countries. Secondly, complementary voluntary guidance and reporting mechanisms, as we also have like confidence building measures for our BWC. They can also support transparency and compliance It can include best practices for digital chain of custody, secure operation of cloud laboratories, authentication of users, and responsible use of all those automated workflows in the intersection of AI, bio, and digital interface. So, in my view, such tools would align with the proposed open-ended working group on compliance, which also aims to strengthen the confidence building and verification capacities in different nations under the umbrella of United Nations. So, as I had previously also mentioned that AI and synthetic biology together can design new proteins, novel proteins, which do not even exist in nature, and therefore they are not on any control list. So, the convention can benefit from shifting list-based towards capability-based approaches. So, list we have like the list of all those pathogens which are of concern, but the convention can benefit if we shift from list based towards capability based approaches, because AI and synthetic biology can like design novel things which are not mentioned in those lists. So embedding these things into the mandate of science and technology mechanism, convention can definitely strengthen its ability to identify risks early, leverage new opportunities for the peaceful cooperation between the countries, and definitely operationalize the Article 10 in a manner which is very consistent with the global equity and shared security. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zia. And you already mentioned these tools, and now I have a question for Julius. What tools or methodologies are most promising in your view for enabling systematic science and technology review under the convention?
Okay, thank you. Let me answer this again in the context of our region. If you remember, there's this from 2013 to 2016, we have this nuclear security summits that so it's nuclear security, and these summits help to identify how to implement several nuclear security conventions better without changing the conventions, but implement them better. And one key lesson that I got from the nuclear security field is the proliferation and establishment of regional nuclear security centers of excellence. So we have several of them in Asia Pacific. If we can replicate it in the field of biosecurity and the implementation of the BWC, we can explore, or the state parties can explore this the establishment of these regional centers of excellence for biosecurity, which includes capacity building and practical training programs for various biosecurity issues that entail emerging biotechnologies and cyber biosecurity. This would involve a country hosting such capacity building training programs to help the global south in terms of increasing the awareness and heightening the capacity to address various issues that can threaten the BWC. So I believe that at the heart of strengthening BWC is how we implement BWC in a more innovative and timely manner. And I think we need to diversify the actors, the regional actors and national actors that can help the global community to implement the BWC. So I mentioned the regional centers of I would like to propose to have this to explore this concept of regional centers of excellence. And number two is we need to mainstream the role of national biorisk associations. When I did my fieldwork research in Southeast Asia, I appreciated very much the work done by professional associations involving biosecurity and biotechnology and other life science researchers. And they govern themselves without the intervention of a national entity. So they have some kind of code of conduct or guidelines in that they promote for their members in conducting life science research. And that involves detecting potential DURC and anticipating risk from emerging biotechnologies and cyber biosecurity risk. Yeah, thank you.
Clarice, can I add to that point also?
Yeah, sure.
Mentioned
Go
by
ahead.
Julius? Oh, thank you so much. You have asked that what methodologies actually can improve or enable the systemic science and technology review for the convention. So, in my view, because the volume of scientific literature, if we look at that, it is doubling every few years, we can say. And if we put many human experts, they cannot read all the published literature within due time. So we can use like natural language processing models to scan all those global preprints and patents being filed. This will act as an early warning radar, because as soon as we detect any anomaly, we can respond to that. So early detection is the key. So this natural language processing models can early detect all those things which are arising due to the convergence trends and have some dual use implication. Secondly, definitely I agree with the Julius that role of all those national organizations and the biorisk management organizations, they can offer continuous input between review conferences, ensuring assessments also remain current. So, last but not least, we should have a standard rubric for assessment, because once the threat is identified, for example, how we grade it, like how we can recommend that this is this type of threat, this is how much impact it has. So, I recommend adopting a semi-quantitative decision model for that. For example, we can score the technology and the outcomes of that technology, considering the accessibility of that technology, the ease of use of that technology, and the magnitude of harm, how much harm that technology can make. So we can do a semi-quantitative assessment based on those identified risks. Thank you.
Ryan?
Yeah, I'd like to add a response to this as well. So Zia brought up the idea of scientometrics, or using scientific publications and patents to try to understand emerging trends. This is so my colleagues and I have done a project on this, and I think it'll be published in a forthcoming book commemorating the 50th anniversary of the BWC. We wanted to design a passive sort of horizon scanning system that worked on preprints, scientific publications, and patents as well, to try to the question we're trying to identify or answer wasn't so much, is there an anomaly here, but rather what are the trends that are ongoing in emerging biotechnology. I think when we talk about emerging biotechnology, people refer to different things, different aspects, or different subfields. And I think it's interesting to look quantitatively at what applications are being actively invested in, what kind of research is happening, and at what rates. So we looked at scientific publications and patents and found that a lot of focus was being put into biomedical applications, design of novel enzymes and peptides for therapeutic purposes, and other applications like that, and a lot of intersection with deep learning. So those are some of the findings that we got from a very passive horizon scanning system. And that was our prototype for what a science and tech review mechanism could start off in an aspirational version of the BWC, which is more, which reacts to emerging, which instead of reacting to technology, has foresight on what emerging technology is most at risk. So yeah, I think there are limits as to how much scientometrics and the analysis of these types of open source literature can help. But I think it does help to further our understanding of exactly what we're discussing when we're talking about emerging biotechnology. And I think a lot of this is enabled by cyberbio, because so much of biological activity is now being digitized, and innovation, research all leave this footprint of publications, of reports, of patents. And this digital footprint is now enabling us to look at the entire field of research or activity from that point of view. So I know there have been a lot of horizon scanning efforts in the past with organizations like the WHO on dual use technologies. A lot of that has been based on expert elicitation, and that is very good to have a top-down view of people who are very experienced with the field and their understanding of what are emerging. I think our proposal for a more passive horizon scanning scientometrics-based approach would be more of like a bottom-up approach of looking at the field itself. And I think those methods complement each other to give a very holistic view of what is the state of play in biotechnology? How should the BWC respond? Are there areas that the BWC should respond to? And yeah, I think that like what Zia said with language models now and natural language processing, I'm excited to see how well we can do that. And I think initiatives like the Watchtower program, I think will help with that a lot.
We hope, and I strongly encourage everyone to read your chapter on this. It was very interesting. So thank you all. Now I would like to pose some questions we received from the audience. So there are a couple of questions about the difference between cyber biosecurity and cyber security by itself. Louison already touched upon this in her presentation. But does anyone else want to add to the discussion on this differentiation?
Yeah, I can add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Much Clarice. Actually, I can add my personal experience into that because in this year and previous year, we have trained around 300 scientists, life scientists, healthcare scientists, and researchers in Pakistan on cyber biosecurity. So we brought together those scientists in different groups along with IT professionals. When we gave them different scenarios on cybersecurity and cyber biosecurity, we analyzed that the cyber behavior, the cyber sanitation behavior is not very good for the life scientists. One thing, and we analyze another thing. The cyber professionals are definitely very good at their field, but they do not know the value of the biological data. They do not understand all those sequence information, as Ryan also mentioned. So bringing those together was a definitely fruitful outcome. While IT professionals were able to understand the biosecurity and biology people were able to understand cybersecurity, and together it became like a cyber biosecurity. As an example, definitely this is an excellent observation from the participants also, because the cyber tools are same. Firewalls we are using, the encryption, the access controls, they are mostly the same for cyber security and cyber biosecurity. While traditional cybersecurity focuses on CIA triad, we might have listened about that, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data itself. But in cyber biosecurity, it focuses on the biological and physical impact of the data which is being compromised. I can give an example like uh, in cybersecurity scenario, for example, we consider that a bank is hacked, money will be stolen, customer data will be leaked, and definitely most of the part is reversible, like money can be insured and it can be refinanced also. Now we consider the cyber biosecurity scenario. So there is a biofoundry, biomanufacturing organization, for example, which is being hacked with a ransomware attack, and it locks the files which is actually dealing with the vaccine production. For example, we can consider the COVID vaccine production, and it alters the temperature of the vaccine fermenter, for example, by 2 degrees. It will ruin all the millions of doses being produced in that facility. Or worst, we can say that if a malicious hacker alters a DNA sequence being sent to a synthesizer, it will cause a machine to print a toxin or a biological weapon type of thing, rather a treatment. So if we do not understand the biological data, biological impact of the cyber data, we will not be able to screen all those sequences, or we will not be able to understand the type of attack we may face. So definitely we have to understand that there is biosecurity which includes information security which is the pillar of the biosecurity. It is linked with the cybersecurity. I hope my answer will be sufficient.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm aware that we don't have much time left, but before closing, I would like to ask you a last question. So the chair of the working group has just released the last version of his draft final report for the BWC, which will be considered next week at the working group meeting here in Geneva. You can find the link to the draft in the chats. So I would like to give all our panelists the chance to provide any concluding remark that they would like to make. And as experts also, if you could improve or draft one recommendation in the current negotiating document related to cyber biosecurity, what would it be? Perhaps we can start with Ryan.
Yeah, I think the working document is very impressive and very comprehensive. So if I were to make a recommendation, I think to bang on the drum further on digital sequencing information, I think in the section that discusses measures on science and tech development relevant to the convention, I would strongly recommend states parties recognize digital sequencing information as well as other related intangible technologies as aspects that constitute a material capability when it comes to precursors of potential biological weapons development, and therefore they're relevant to things like Article 3 and Article 10. I think what this looks like in reality would be the development of harmonized oversight frameworks on how we should regulate sharing of digital sequencing information, whether or not development of common standards for commercial gene synthesis screening, for example, and the transfer of the sequence data. And yeah, I think that's very aspirational, but I'd like to add it in the report as a recommendation.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Julius?
Yes, I would like to touch on the provision on the international cooperation and assistance. And I think one key factor here is the concept of capacity building cooperation, whether it's at the global level or at the regional level. And I think that the working group should explore further on how to maximize the potentials of regional organizations in promoting biosecurity, cyber biosecurity, horizon scanning related to emerging biotechnologies. I think that there are good knowledge sources, indigenous, regional, and scientific knowledge sources from regional bodies. And another thing is in with regard to multi-stakeholder collaboration. So it should not just involve state actors. It should involve scientists, professional associations, ethicists, cybersecurity experts, and there should be some kind of a platform under the in the concept under the provision of international cooperation assistance on putting these diverse groups of people and explore various ways of strengthening cyber biosecurity and increasing the awareness among users, developers, companies, and regulators with regard to the cyber biosecurity measures.
Thank you very much, Julius. Zia?
Thank you so much. I have read that document, which is very definitely comprehensive, and all the recommendations are very to the point and need of the time. I would propose, if we are being asked to mention only one thing, so I would propose strengthening the Annex 3, which is probably on page 24, by explicitly mandating the science and technology advisory mechanisms to conduct regular assessments of cyber biosecurity risks and opportunities arising from the convergence of biological science with artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure, and all those automated laboratory systems. So, this recommendation would not create any additional legal obligations for the states parties. Instead, it would improve transparency, it will enhance the confidence, and help states parties to anticipate emerging challenges and tackle those in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zia. Louison, I'm not asking you for a recommendation, but any final thoughts from you?
No, I mean, thank you for all the great ideas shared and also the questions. I see we still have a lot on the distinction between cybersecurity and cyber biosecurity, and you know, I think this is also the aim of this sort of events to trigger that debate. So I hope more will be produced, and that in the BWC fora that will also be a discussion that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louison. So now reminds me to thank our speaker for joining us. Thanks to all of you joining online, giving us your time and your participation in this discussion. I would also like to thank the UNIDIR team who supported the production of the event, particularly Nick, Arndt, and Maria Garson-Maceda, for helping make things work, and UNODA colleagues for input to this event. This series of events will continue next year, so make sure to stay tuned to UNIDIR's social media for the announcements. This event in the Watchtower project is funded by the European Union on UNIDIR's side, and it has funding support of the United States on UNODA's side. Before closing, if I could encourage you to complete our online feedback form. It takes only a couple of minutes, I promise, and it is anonymous. You can find the link in the chat, or you can also scan the QR code on the screen. Have a good afternoon here in Geneva, or good day or night, depending on where this event finds you. Bye. Thank you.